Alright, guys, so I'm going to be reviewing a comic that I got recently while I was in New Orleans, while I was on my little vacation in New Orleans. I got this book, and it's been a white whale of mine. It's been on my list of white whale comics, as I call them. And this is something it's getting harder and harder to find because of what it is. And that is Aliens and Vampirella, or Vampirella versus Aliens, depending on who you ask. It's the same thing. So why you're probably wondering, well, why is this getting so hard to find? Well, this was during the time this was like the end times of when Dark Horse had the rights to Aliens. This came out around those last few comics where they crossed over with other stuff. There was a time where we saw tons of Alien and Predator crossovers, and then there was a silent moment, and then towards the in the mid to late 2010s, there was a small boom again. And that's how we got Archie versus Predator, that's how we got the Judge Dredd Alien Predator crossover, and we got this. I understand that there were going to be others, but then the Marvel thing happened, and they lost the comic. So, this is one of the last Dark Horse Alien crossovers. That's kind of the big importance to this, is that it's one of the last it's one of the last Dark Horse Alien crossovers, and until Marvel does an Alien crossover, it's the last Alien crossover. Technically speaking, it is the last Alien crossover. Until Marvel decides to do, like, I don't know, Alien Guardians of the Galaxy or Alien versus Venom or something. And that'll probably depend on how well Wolverine versus Predator does, and that'll make them want to go, oh, we can do more. So yeah. So let's talk about this comic. So what is Alien Vampirella? Or Aliens versus Vampirella versus whatever. So this crossover is basically set in the future on a Mars colony, where it's been discovered that there has been a vampire colony underground. But the thing is that they were killed off by something, and that something were Xenomorphs. Apparently, this vampire colony uncovered a downed ship that was there longer before they were. It was before. It's not the engineers or predators, and they discovered the Xenomorphs. And the Xenomorphs killed off the vampires in droves. If you're wondering why that is, in Vampirella lore, Vampirella is she's a space vampire. And these vampires were and it is said in the Vampirella lore a few times that there are alien vampires, but they're also vampires were so advanced as a species, they actually built ships and flew out into space. And this was one of the first ones, being a Mars colony, where they accidentally ran to Xenomorphs. So thousands of years later, it's been discovered, the Vampire Temple has been discovered again, and Vampirella has been called by the Weyland-Yutani company to authenticate this, to, like, look into this. Now, what's interesting is that they treat vampires as, like, a thing that just exists now. Like when Vampirella shows up on the colony base, it's like vampires are treated as, oh, they're just a thing now. And this is the far future, and this crossover, so I guess, like, vampires did the Lasat thing, and we're like, yeah, we're real. Yeah, we're totally real. Just, what up? So I wonder if that's the case. But they treat it like they know what Vampirella is, they know what vampires are, but yeah, they don't really go too deep into it. Other than, hey, vampires are real in this. Humans know vampires are real in this comic, but yeah. Also, it does interest me as to, like, when we get to see the Xenomorphs, you'd think we would have had more of the Weyland-Yutani. This is supposed to be Weyland-Yutani. You'd think you would have had more stuff. We don't get any synthetics. We don't get any company members or anyone knowing, because you'd think they would have known about the Xenomorphs by this point. But yeah, this is a pretty violent comic. This is pure Dark Horse bloody violence, and Vampirella really leans into that. There's some great fights in here. This doesn't feel like what I really love is to hats off to Karina Becco, who does a phenomenal job of mixing the Alien lore with the Vampirella lore. Because Becco actually wrote several Alien books, and she was also the writer. I think it was a she. Yeah, I think it's a she. Karina Becco. Becco wrote the Green Lantern Earth 1 books too, which also have like a bit of a horror theme to them as well. So Becco is really good at doing like horror-based comics, and this really does lean into the horror side. We get to see xenomorphs like rip out of people. We get to see them just straight up slaughter people. There's actually a really cool violent death in one of the comics where a vampire tries to bite a xenomorph in the neck and just ends up just spewing acid blood all over his face, and it just melts it from the inside out. It's a really cool graphic image. The book's 6 issues long. It does have a very abrupt ending. That's my really only real criticism, is that it has a very abrupt ending. It's just, boop, here we are at the end, and that's really the only problem. But other than that, this is a solid book. It really gives a lot of leverage to like your standard Alien story. Like, it really does feel like your by-the-numbers Alien story where people go fuck around where they shouldn't fuck around. Xenomorphs happen, but now you throw in Vampirella and space vampires, and it actually works. Do we get a space vampire Xenomorph? Yeah, it's a queen, but they don't really go too deep into it, other than the queen now has wings. That's really it. The queen Xenomorph flies. That's really all they do with it. The artwork is very fun. I'd show you, but this is a pretty violent book. All in all, it's a pretty solid comic. The problem is it's getting harder and harder to find. Like I said, this was my White Whale book, and the reason why is because this was under Dark Horse, and Dark Horse can't republish this anymore because the comic rights are over with Marvel. So, like I said, if you can find this at all, this was my White Whale book that one random comic shop I went into had it. So, yeah, hats off to Crescent City Comics. Minor shout out to them. But yeah, so all in all, if you can find this at all for a good price, because I've looked on Amazon and other websites, it's kind of getting big. It's starting to rack up some zeros. But if you can find this comic at all, I highly recommend checking this out. If you're a fan of Alien or you want to read some Vampirella books, here you go. But yeah, other than that, hope you all enjoyed this comic. I'm Mr. Multiverse. I'll see you next time in Multiverse.